let's talk about layers of mind. The mid-20th century brought a revolution in understanding of how children develop and launched the entire field of developmental psychology. The basic theory of stage development in children is well established now and paints a very messy picture. At birth, you start at 0 and advance in small steps along meandering pathways. Sometimes you advance rapidly, sometimes slowly, and sometimes you go backwards, you regress. Over time, though, you tend to spiral upwards, solidifying earlier stages on which to build later stages and becoming more capable. Making it even messier, the process takes place simultaneously along numerous lines of development, such as verbal, social, mathematical, physical, musical, and so on. Maybe you've heard of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, each of which can be viewed as a somewhat independent line of development. Each is a frontier of learning and growth. Here I'm suggesting some very general stages of consciousness, which I'll describe briefly, mostly in terms of cognitive line of development, made famous by Jean Piaget, a founding figure in developmental psychology. It's important to note that the correlations to age here, infant, toddler, and so on, are only broad generalizations to be taken with a grain of salt. Each child develops with unpredictable timing, and most people's development slows down or plateaus at some point in each line of development. Infants start out in an oceanic consciousness, a bundle of undifferentiated sensory inputs. Over time, the infant finds patterns and organizes the stimuli to make meaning from them. For example, an infant may randomly grab and bite their toe and experience pain. With repetitions, the infant comes to understand the toe as part of themselves. They understand the difference between me and the rest of the world, the skin boundary. That's pretty basic learning. But that's the starting point for each of us, 0 meaning until we figure it out on our own terms. I'm calling the next stage magic consciousness. The child doesn't fully differentiate between what's in their mind and what has physical presence. And they also don't get that each person has a separate stream of experience. So for example, maybe you've played hide and seek with maybe a 1-year-old, and when it's their turn to hide from you, what do? They may, yes, they cover their eyes, and they may even say, "You can't see me." Because they can't see you, and they can't separate what's in their mind from any other reality. They think you can't see them. In the magic mind, what you imagine can be real in the same way as physical objects have reality. And that can be terrifying, of course, to experience your imagination as physical reality, which is partly why toddlers are prone to nightmares. That also makes magic real. When that amusing adult pulls a penny from behind your ear, in your own experience, that's as real as anything else. I think fascination with dinosaurs often begins when a child is straddling the magic and mythic stages or going back and forth. The fear of monsters, imagined monsters, is still very real and fresh, but now they know it's only in their own mind, and in that sense they've prevailed over the monsters. They've gained power over fear. 2 comments here. First, you don't move from one stage to the next cleanly. It's back and forth, leaps and falls, tiny steps, twisting pathways, and it's different for each person. Second, we retain some ability to experience our past stages and states of mind. I enjoy magic shows, and I think it's because I'm tapping into the delight of my child mind. In the mythic stage, children tend to think concretely. For example, if you give a kid who is thinking in this stage 3 blocks of different colors, and you ask them how many different ways can they line them up, like red, green, blue, they'll line them up one way, and then they'll randomly line them up another way, and they'll keep doing that. But in the next stage, in the rational stage, they'll approach it more methodically. Maybe they'll put the red one first and then try each combination that begins with red and then move on. They'll think through an abstract methodology and be able to implement it. The rational stage is distinguished in the cognitive line of development by the ability to think abstractly in terms of principles and ideas. Many kids reach this stage around adolescence, and it transforms their sense of self-identity. In Mythic, kids tend to think of themselves in terms of their physical body and their role in family. Around adolescence, identity tends to shift to the mental realm of self-image and also to peer group relations. Personal appearance becomes more important at this stage, what they wear, for example. They create an abstract idea of themselves, a self-image, and try it on mentally and socially. They enter a world of ideas, and they become idealistic. They begin to look at the physical and social worlds in terms of principles. Sometimes the result is a heightened sensitivity to social justice, environmental care, and other issues of principle. I want to mention Maslow's hierarchy of needs briefly here, which can be viewed as a developmental sequence. The idea is that you must satisfy basic needs such as food, shelter, and belonging before you are concerned with higher needs such as achievement, understanding, beauty, justice, wisdom. Maslow's hierarchy can be correlated with other lines of development as the needs that are generally the focus of concern at each stage. In each line of development, satisfaction at each stage uncovers new challenges, which then become the new focus. Much like in the stages of culture, you sort of push off one stage into the next, reacting to perceived deficiencies or resolving dissonance. You rearrange your mental furniture and you start seeing the world differently. We are itchy creatures, we human beings. And each time we scratch an itch to satisfaction, we become aware of a new one somewhere else. Life is a whack-a-mole game of itches. The itch is a provocation, an opportunity for self-authorship. Scratching can be the exercise of human volition. It's the exercise of what's often called agency, the capacity to act on one's behalf, a vital capacity. Stage transitions in human development share essential properties with cultural stage transitions. Earlier forms remain. Abstract thinking augments concrete thinking, but you don't lose the ability to think concretely. Later builds on earlier, novelty emerges, and the possibilities are expanded. There's a greater range of action, expanded possibilities for things to go wrong or right. The summary is that each stage includes what's there and transcends it. I want to mention multiple intelligences again. Made famous by Harvard researcher Howard Gardner, it reflects the common sense idea that people can be smart in many different ways. Gardner originally identified 8 intelligences shown here: interpersonal, logical mathematical, verbal linguistic, musical rhythmic, bodily kinesthetic, naturalistic, and intrapersonal. Some people have tried to label children to one intelligence or another, but most agree that each person uniquely blends all of the intelligences. Nobody knows exactly how many lines of development there are, but the best guesses seem to be a dozen or two. That is, these are capacities that reflect biologically distinct origins and partially dependent or fully dependent developmental pathways. Some of them appear to be dependent on one another. So, for example, development of empathy depends at least partly on development of cognitive skills such as the ability to project and predict another person's thoughts and feelings.